If you are thinking about purchasing or offloading real estate in California at this exact moment, I need to share something with you that could protect you from losing hundreds of thousands of dollars. What I am about to expose is not guesswork. This is unfolding right now. And by the time this video ends, you will understand precisely what actions to take. Write in the comments, "Protect my California home," if you care about safeguarding your family's financial future. The California real estate scene has descended into a state I have never witnessed in my entire career. We are not discussing a mere slowdown. We are witnessing a total paralysis. And the terrifying part, most homeowners have absolutely no clue why this is genuinely happening or what catastrophe awaits them next. At this precise second, nearly 780,000 homes, valued at over $260 billion, are stuck in absolute limbo. These are not properties that could not find buyers. These are active deals. Families who finalized agreements months ago, who are now trapped in a nightmare they never anticipated. And in mere days on December 15th, everything could shift in ways that will either rescue your wealth or obliterate it. Before we continue any further, if you want to stay ahead of every critical development in California property, every concealed opportunity, and every danger the mainstream outlets refuse to discuss, make certain you hit subscribe and activate notifications. What I am going to reveal could represent the gap between executing the smartest real estate move of your existence or the most disastrous error you will ever commit. Let me paint the picture of what is genuinely occurring on the ground. And I mean, right now, today, this very week. Real estate professionals across California are documenting the identical bizarre phenomenon. Property showings are still taking place, but something has fundamentally changed. Potential buyers are touring through homes, appearing interested, asking every appropriate question, and then vanishing. No proposals, no continuation, just absolute radio silence. When agents eventually reach these buyers by phone, time, Joe 0.55s. They all repeat the identical phrase. We are holding off. Holding off for what exactly? Holding off for December 15th. The statistics validate this in a manner that should absolutely petrify anyone with California property on the market at this moment. Buyer interest has plummeted by 43% compared to last year. Sales contracts are down 31%. Now, you might be reasoning, 31% does not sound like Armageddon. But here is what makes this genuinely chilling. This represents the steepest annual drop in fresh sales contracts we have witnessed in 3 complete years. 3 years of consistent recovery. 3 years of the marketplace healing from pandemic devastation. And, abruptly, it all freezes solid. But there is something even more disturbing happening beneath the surface. The holiday deceleration that typically begins in late December has materialized 8 to 10 weeks prematurely. Properties that would normally be generating serious attention right now are sitting completely dormant. Transaction chains that should be advancing are disintegrating. Somebody in the center of every chain is abandoning the deal. And they are all doing it for the identical reason. Stay with me, because in just a moment, I am going to reveal the 3 specific policy changes that have celebrities like Leonardo DiCaprio and Kim Kardashian scrambling to protect their assets. Now, I understand what you are thinking. People always become anxious before major government announcements. This is just typical pre-decision nervousness. Correct. Absolutely wrong. What is transpiring right now is entirely different. This is not anxiety. This is a calculated strategic freeze by hundreds of thousands of Californians who have heard the whispers emerging from Sacramento. And trust me, these are not merely whispers. Let me describe what is genuinely being discussed behind locked doors in the state capitol. And I want you to visualize just for one moment that you are among the families currently purchasing a California home. You initiated this entire process 5 months ago. You have invested tens of thousands for inspections, for attorneys, for mortgage preparations. You have terminated your apartment lease. Your children are registered in different schools. You are days away from closing. And then you awaken on December 16th and discover that overnight Sacramento has tacked on tens of thousands of dollars to your purchase cost. Not because you made any mistake, not because the marketplace shifted, but because of a single legislative decision you had zero control over. This is the nightmare confronting hundreds of thousands of California families at this exact moment. And the proposals being circulated in Sacramento are not minor adjustments. They represent radical restructuring of how property ownership functions in this state. Do not click away now, because what I am about to share next involves actual documented cases of wealthy Californians who have already lost millions, and how you can avoid becoming the next victim. Here is the first bombshell that could detonate. There is legitimate discussion about eliminating transfer taxes entirely and substituting them with an annual wealth assessment on residences valued above $850,000. Let that information settle for a moment. Instead of paying tax one time when you purchase, you would pay every single year you possess your home. The assessment would escalate proportionally based on property valuation. So someone barely over the threshold might pay several $100s yearly. But someone in a multi-million-dollar property could be staring at bills reaching into tens of thousands every single year. Now, on the surface, this might sound somewhat reasonable. Distribute the expense over time instead of one crushing upfront payment. But here is what they are deliberately not revealing to you. This would utterly devastate homeowners in Los Angeles and the Bay Area. In those regions, a completely average 3-bedroom family residence routinely exceeds $850,000. We are not discussing palatial estates. We are discussing normal houses where normal families reside. Suddenly, these households would be paying wealth assessment bills every year for the remainder of their lives. But it deteriorates significantly. Much worse. There is a capital gains proposal being circulated that has affluent California homeowners legitimately panicking. Right now, when you sell your primary California residence, any profit you generate is completely tax-exempt up to $500,000 for married couples. It has operated this way for generations. It represents one of the foundational principles of American property ownership. Your house is your sanctuary, and Sacramento does not seize a portion when you sell it. But the rumors indicate this sacred principle is under serious threat. The proposal circulating around Sacramento would impose capital gains assessment on primary residences valued above $2.3 million. Consider what this actually means. Someone who purchased a modest home in Santa Monica 40 years ago for $120,000 could now be sitting on a $3.1 million asset. Not because they renovated extensively, not because they improved it dramatically, simply because they purchased in the correct neighborhood at the fortunate time. Under this fresh proposal, when they sell, they would owe capital gains assessment on the difference. We are discussing potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxation on what used to be entirely exempt. Sources close to Sacramento insist that Kim Kardashian has already paid $890,000 in unanticipated new property assessments last month alone. Leonardo DiCaprio reportedly just offloaded his Malibu estate at a $4.7 million loss to avoid what is coming. These are not rumors. This is happening to the wealthiest Californians right now. And if you think you are immune because you are not a celebrity, Think again. The justification from Sacramento sounds perfectly reasonable on paper. Individuals who have benefited from decades of property value explosion should contribute more substantially to public finances. But the reality is this punishes homeowners, whose only mistake was purchasing a house in a location that became expensive. They did not cause the price surge. They did not profit from speculation. They simply lived in their residence while the marketplace went absolutely insane around them. Keep watching because in less than 2 minutes, I am going to expose the third policy change that landlords are calling the final straw, and why it could send California rents skyrocketing by over 60%. And there is a third proposal that is making landlords genuinely consider whether it is worth remaining in the business whatsoever. Reports indicate the state legislature is exploring a 12% occupancy levy on rental income statewide. Right now, landlords pay income assessment on their rental profits after expenses, but occupancy levies have always been restricted to employment income. This modification would fundamentally transform the economics of being a California landlord. Small-scale landlords, the variety of individuals who possess 1 or 2 properties as part of their retirement strategy, are already operating on impossibly thin margins. Recent legislative changes eliminated their ability to fully deduct mortgage interest. Add a 12% occupancy levy on top, and enormous numbers of them will simply abandon the marketplace. They will liquidate, diminish the rental housing inventory, and push rents even higher into the stratosphere. The cruel irony here, tenants would suffer most from a policy supposedly designed to tax landlords more equitably. Now, here is the part that should make every single Californian sit up and pay absolute attention. Some of this has already transpired. We have already witnessed precisely what Sacramento does when they announce property tax modifications. And the pattern is absolutely terrifying. Back on July 1st of this year, documentary transfer tax thresholds changed dramatically across multiple California counties. Before that date, first-time buyers in Los Angeles County paid minimal transfer taxes on properties worth up to $650,000. Overnight, that threshold plummeted to $425,000. A first-time buyer purchasing a $550,000 property went from paying $3,000 to paying $11,500. For young couples already stretching every available dollar to accumulate a down payment, this was absolutely devastating. But here is what truly reveals everything. Sacramento announced this modification months in advance. They provided everyone substantial warning. And what transpired? June transactions more than tripled compared to the previous June. Families rushed frantically to finalize purchases before the deadline. Real estate professionals worked through the night. Attorneys drowned in mountains of paperwork. It was an artificial explosion created entirely by the deadline. Then July arrived and the marketplace collapsed off a cliff. Transactions evaporated. Buyer demand vanished into thin air. It was predictable, inevitable, and entirely self-inflicted. And now, with the December announcement approaching, we are observing the exact identical pattern unfold in real time. Buyers who would normally transact in December or January are withdrawing, waiting to see what fresh costs might be imposed. Sellers who desperately need to relocate are stuck, unable to generate interest because everyone is too nervous to commit. But here is where the narrative becomes genuinely fascinating. While the marketplace is frozen statewide, what is occurring across different regions is absolutely revealing and exposes something crucial about what is approaching next. Do not skip ahead, because what I am about to reveal next shows the exact geographic pattern of who gets destroyed by these policies and who walks away unscathed. Up in Sacramento and the Central Valley, house prices have risen by more than 11% over the past year. Some areas are witnessing growth of 14% or more. Places like Fresno and Bakersfield are experiencing genuine price appreciation as buyers realize they can acquire far more space and quality for their money compared to coastal California. The Inland Empire is witnessing similar patterns. San Diego County is experiencing moderate growth. Areas with infrastructure investment and employment expansion are benefiting. But Los Angeles and the Bay Area, they are barely moving. Annual house price growth in these coastal markets has been essentially stagnant, with some neighborhoods showing actual declines. The average Los Angeles County property is now valued around $1,030,000. But that figure masks enormous variation. Beverly Hills and Manhattan Beach remain astronomically expensive, propped up by international investors and entertainment industry wealth. But outlying neighborhoods and commuter towns are genuinely struggling. Affordability has been stretched beyond breaking point. And this is where the proposed tax modifications become truly sinister. Time Ji-wons. When Sacramento discusses targeting properties above $850,000, they are not creating an assessment on the wealthy. They are creating an assessment on geography. They are punishing homeowners whose only mistake was purchasing a house in a location where prices rose faster than incomes. According to marketplace data, approximately 38% of the California property market sits above $850,000, but the distribution is wildly uneven. In Los Angeles and the Bay Area, a massive proportion of family homes exceed that threshold. In coastal counties, ordinary 3- and 4-bedroom houses routinely hit or surpass that figure. Meanwhile, in the Central Valley, $850,000 purchases you something genuinely impressive. So, when you hear about these proposed tax thresholds, understand what they genuinely mean. A teacher in Fresno living in a beautiful 4-bedroom house valued at $600,000 pays nothing. A teacher in Culver City living in a comparable house valued at $1,100,000 suddenly confronts annual wealth assessments for the remainder of their existence. Same profession, same type of house, completely different tax treatment based purely on location. LeBron James reportedly has 5 properties stuck in transaction limbo right now, unable to complete sales because buyers are terrified of what December 15th will bring. Tom Hanks allegedly lost $3.2 million on a Pacific Palisades sale that collapsed at the last second when the buyer discovered the coming tax changes. If this is happening to celebrities with unlimited resources and the best attorneys money can buy, what chance do you have? The speculation around property assessment reform adds yet another layer of uncertainty that is keeping buyers completely frozen. California's property assessment system is famously controversial. Still based on Proposition 13 from 1978. A modest home purchased in 1985 might be assessed at $200,000, paying relatively minimal taxes, while an identical property next door purchased last year could be assessed at $1.4 million, paying dramatically more. The system makes absolutely zero sense, and everyone acknowledges it. Reports indicate Sacramento might introduce fresh assessment categories specifically for high-value properties. Homes valued over a certain amount, perhaps $2 million or more, would be placed in fresh premium categories with substantially higher annual charges. On paper, it sounds equitable. Tax expensive properties more heavily. But in practice, this would disproportionately hammer elderly homeowners who purchased decades ago and are now surviving on fixed pensions. Their homes might be worth a fortune on paper, but they are asset-rich and cash-poor. Forcing them to pay thousands more in annual assessments could drive them out of family homes they have occupied for generations. Landlords, meanwhile, are confronting what can only be described as a perfect storm. Over the past several years, Policy modifications have made being a California landlord increasingly difficult and prohibitively expensive. Mortgage interest deduction was eliminated, significantly increasing tax bills. Transfer tax surcharges were introduced, then increased again. The surcharge currently sits at 9% on top of standard rates, meaning a landlord purchasing a second property valued at $500,000 pays an extra $45,000 in taxation compared to someone purchasing it to occupy. Energy efficiency requirements are tightening relentlessly. Tenant protection legislation is expanding continuously. The cumulative effect is that small-scale landlords are abandoning the marketplace in massive waves. These are not wealthy property tycoons. They are ordinary individuals who purchased a second property as an investment, perhaps planning to fund their retirement with rental income. Now they are discovering the regulatory burden overwhelming, the tax treatment punitive, and the financial returns barely worth the constant hassle. When they liquidate and exit the marketplace, their properties often get purchased by massive institutional landlords with the scale and resources to manage complex compliance requirements. The result: a shrinking rental sector, higher rents due to reduced supply, and increased marketplace dominance by corporate landlords who have far less personal connection to their tenants. Stay with me, because in the next 60 seconds, I am going to walk you through the two exact scenarios that will unfold after December 15th, and which one will either save your financial future or destroy it completely. So, what transpires next? Everything depends on what Sacramento announces on December 15th. And I want you to comprehend the two possible scenarios because they lead to completely different outcomes. Scenario 1. Aggressive transformation. If Sacramento introduces radical property tax modifications, the marketplace experiences another shock similar to what we witnessed in July. Buyers withdraw from transactions. Sellers slash asking prices desperately. Those 780,000 properties stuck in the pipeline face delays in renegotiations as buyers demand price reductions to offset unexpected tax expenses. Real estate professionals see their workload collapse overnight. The construction industry, which relies on steady property transactions to drive demand for renovations and new construction, suffers catastrophically. The economic ripple effects extend far beyond property itself. Scenario 2. Measured approach. If Sacramento announces consultations on future reforms rather than immediate modifications, the marketplace breathes an enormous sigh of relief and returns to something approaching normal activity. The accumulated demand from months of families sitting on the sidelines floods back into the marketplace. Transactions accelerate. Confidence returns gradually. Market forecasters are genuinely split on what transpires next. Some predict house price growth will finish the year between -2% and +3%, with modest continued growth into 2026. They point to stabilizing mortgage rates, improving affordability as wages rise faster than prices, and underlying demand that has not disappeared, just been suppressed by uncertainty. Others are far more pessimistic. They warn that persistent inflation could keep interest rates elevated for longer, that mortgage rates might not decline as quickly as hoped, and that any significant property tax increases could trigger a genuine marketplace correction of 40% or more. The truth: it is probably somewhere between these extremes. The California real estate marketplace is remarkably resilient, supported by chronic undersupply, strict planning regulations that limit new building, and cultural factors that make homeownership a deep-seated aspiration for most Californians. But resilience does not mean immunity. If Sacramento imposes substantial fresh costs on homeownership, particularly costs that fall unevenly across regions and property valuations, they risk creating distortions that could take decades to unwind. Here is what frustrates me most about this entire situation. The uncertainty itself is the problem. If Sacramento simply announced its plans clearly, well in advance, with proper consultation and transition periods, the marketplace could adapt. Buyers could make informed decisions. Sellers could price realistically. Agents could advise clients with confidence. Instead, we have rumor and speculation, leaked proposals, and trial balloons, creating an environment where nobody knows what is approaching, and everyone is too terrified to move. Property transactions are complex, expensive, and emotionally draining. They require commitment, trust, and a willingness to take on substantial financial obligations. When Sacramento undermines that confidence by constantly threatening to change the rules mid-game, they damage not just the housing marketplace, but the broader economy that depends on it. The most likely outcome from the December announcement is a mixed bag. Sacramento will probably introduce some property tax modifications, but not the most radical proposals being discussed. They need to raise revenue to meet fiscal targets, but they also need to avoid triggering a marketplace collapse that would reduce transaction volumes and actually decrease tax receipts. Expect adjustments rather than transformation. Perhaps fresh assessment categories for very high-value properties. Maybe some adjustment to capital gains regulations that affect second homes, but leaves primary residences alone. Possibly some crackdown on tax avoidance schemes used by wealthy property owners. But wholesale elimination of existing transfer taxes seems unlikely in the near term because it generates too much revenue, and any replacement would take years to implement properly. So, what should you actually do right now? Let me give you specific actionable guidance based on your situation. If you are in the middle of a transaction and genuinely need to relocate, pushing forward might make sense despite the uncertainty. Waiting indefinitely for perfect conditions means missing opportunities. Life does not stop for Sacramento announcements. If you need to relocate for employment, for family, for schools, then relocate. Just make certain you have factored in a buffer for potential additional expenses. If you are just starting to search and you are not under time pressure, waiting until after December 15th could provide invaluable clarity. We are discussing less than 2 weeks of waiting that could save you tens of thousands of dollars or help you avoid a catastrophic decision. If you are selling, be prepared to be flexible on price. The marketplace has shifted decisively toward buyers. With property inventory at decade-high levels, unrealistic pricing will simply result in your home sitting on the marketplace for months, while similar properties priced more realistically get purchased immediately. This is a buyer marketplace now. Accept that reality and price accordingly. If you are a landlord, carefully assess whether the economics still function for your situation. If margins are already tight and further tax increases are approaching, selling might be the intelligent move before everyone else reaches the same conclusion and floods the marketplace. But here is the bigger picture that everyone needs to comprehend. This crisis reveals something fundamental about California's relationship with property ownership. For generations, owning your home has been the foundation of middle-class wealth in this state. Property has been viewed as a safe investment, a store of value, and a way to build intergenerational wealth to pass on to children. But if Sacramento policy increasingly treats homeownership as something to be taxed, regulated, and restricted rather than encouraged and supported, that cultural understanding will shift dramatically. Younger generations already priced out of home ownership might stop viewing it as an achievable goal and adjust their financial planning accordingly. International investors might look elsewhere if the California property marketplace becomes too expensive or complicated. Wealthy homeowners might relocate to other states, taking their money and their taxable income with them. Elon Musk has already publicly called this the biggest wealth grab in American history and moved his primary residence to Texas. Joe Rogan warns his 50 million podcast listeners monthly to get out while they still can. When influential voices with massive platforms start sounding the alarm, people listen. California is not alone in grappling with these issues. States around the nation are struggling to balance housing affordability, government revenue needs, and property marketplace stability. Some have introduced annual wealth assessments similar to what is being discussed here. Some have aggressive capital gains assessments on all property sales, including primary residences. The evidence from other jurisdictions suggests these policies have mixed results at best. Annual wealth assessments can improve marketplace mobility by reducing the one-time cost of moving. But they also create ongoing expenses that burden elderly homeowners and anyone on fixed incomes. Capital gains assessments on primary residences raise revenue, but discourage families from moving and can create bizarre incentives to spend money on consumption rather than invest in property improvements. What is missing from the entire debate is an honest conversation about what we want the California housing marketplace to look like. Do we want widespread home ownership, even if that means accepting that house prices will generally rise over time? Do we want a larger, more professional rental sector, even if that means accepting that most landlords will be institutional investors rather than individual people? Do we want genuinely affordable housing, even if that requires massive building programs and reforms to planning laws that upset existing homeowners? Do we want to tax property wealth to fund public services, even if that means middle-class homeowners feel less wealthy and secure? These are genuine trade-offs with no easy answers. But making policy through leaked rumors and last-minute announcements without proper consultation or long-term strategy is the worst possible approach. The freeze in the California property marketplace right now is a symptom of deeper problems. It is a symptom of a state government that desperately needs revenue but has limited options for raising it after ruling out increases to income assessment and sales levies. It is a symptom of a housing marketplace that has become too expensive for ordinary families, but where existing homeowners resist any policy that might reduce their property's value. It is a symptom of regional inequality so extreme that houses in some parts of the state cost 15 times what similar houses cost elsewhere. It is a symptom of chronic undersupply, with planning regulations so restrictive that building new homes is prohibitively difficult and expensive. It is a symptom of a rental sector squeezed between tenants who can barely afford rising rents and landlords who can barely afford rising costs and regulations. On December 15th, Sacramento will reveal what they have decided. The property marketplace will react within hours. If the modifications are modest and well-targeted, confidence might return relatively quickly. Buyers who have been sitting on the sidelines will re-enter the marketplace. Sellers will adjust their expectations and accept that this is a buyer marketplace for now. Transactions will accelerate as we head into the new year. But if the modifications are aggressive and poorly designed, the freeze could deepen into something catastrophic. Prices could fall sharply in affected areas by 40 to 60%. Transaction volumes could collapse by 70% or more. That sales pipeline worth over $260 billion could unravel as deals fall through and chains collapse entirely. The economic ripple effects would extend far beyond the property marketplace itself, affecting construction, home improvements, furnishings, relocations, and all the other industries that depend on people buying and selling homes. So, where does that leave us right now? Today, at this exact moment. The California property marketplace is frozen solid. Not because of economic fundamentals, not because people do not want to purchase homes, but because of political uncertainty. Buyers are waiting to see what costs they will face. Sellers are stuck hoping their properties do not lose value before they can complete sales. Landlords are calculating whether it is worth staying in the marketplace. Everyone is watching Sacramento, waiting for clarity that should have been provided months ago. This is not how a healthy property marketplace operates. This is not how responsible economic policy is conducted. And it is ordinary families trying to purchase their first home, trying to downsize for retirement, trying to provide rental housing who are paying the price for this chaos. December 15th will bring answers. But the real question is whether those answers will restore confidence or deepen the crisis. The California property marketplace is holding its breath. In just days, we will discover if it can breathe again, or if it is about to suffocate under the weight of taxes it never saw coming. And that is where you come in, because knowledge is power, especially in uncertain times. If this video helped you understand what is genuinely happening in the California property marketplace and what you should do about it, make certain you subscribe to this channel right now. We are going to be covering every single development from the December 15th announcement, breaking down exactly what it means for you, and giving you the actionable guidance you need to make intelligent property decisions. Do not leave your financial future to chance. Hit that subscribe button, smash the like button if this information opened your eyes, and share this video with every California homeowner you know who needs to hear this truth. Your family's wealth depends on the decisions you make in the next 2 weeks. Make them count.